I know that most people that probably saw my tweet really want to hear about the Star Wars cabinet from Arcade1up. So this was a really it's something I've never done. I haven't gotten an arcade cabinet before, and I know these are recreations. So this I ordered on Monday. I ordered it from Walmart, and I it didn't expect it to come so soon, but I ordered it on Monday and it got here Thursday. And these are kind of Arcade1ups are kind of limited edition. Like they only make so many and sell them for so long, and then you got to get them on third party. It was $500. So is it worth your $500? I have so far spent more time building it than playing it because it is some assembly required. It's a lot of assembly required, and it comes in a super heavy box. So it actually came, and they wouldn't even deliver it to my door. They came in and delivered it to the front of my garage. So I pulled it in my garage. It's 90 pounds. This box is 90 pounds instead of the 60 pounds that the other Arcade1ups are. So I put it into my garage and then had to go in with a hand truck and like take it all the way around the outside of my house. Thankfully, my basement has a door on level, so I didn't have to worry about getting this thing up or downstairs. But it's a big thing, and part of it is it comes with the riser, and I'll talk about the riser in a second. But it's also because of the custom yoke. It's the custom controller for it, which also adds to the price. Because even the ones that come with the riser now are $400. So this one is the most expensive one, and it's actually really well made. So I've got video going on here, and actually I'm going to post this entire segment up to YouTube maybe. And I open the box, and it actually comes with an empty box. It's labeled empty box. It feels empty. It's actually not empty. It has another empty box inside of it. But yes, so I actually got an empty box as part of the packing. It's to make things not shift. I understand why they're doing it. And so it comes with basically an IKEA-like instruction manual. And if you've ever built IKEA stuff before, you know what this entails. It took me about 4 hours because I don't usually build IKEA stuff. It took me about 4 hours to put this together. People who are used to Arcade1ups, this is a build much like all the other Arcade1ups. I've seen like people are able to put it together in 2 hours. Me being brand new, it was a 4-hour build. So one of the things that I do want to point out, if you get this and this is your first build, you're going to want to probably build the riser first. And you'll see all the riser stuff, but you're going to look, and in the manual, in the actual instruction booklet, you're not going to see anything about the riser. You're like, how do I build the riser? Well, you got to find the little bag called riser, and inside that bag is the actual build instructions for the riser. So you're going to want to look for that, and you're going to put basically, screwdriver things together. Somebody said on Discord, ignore the warning about not using a power tool. I did not ignore that warning, so it's all hand tightened and everything. But the reason they say don't use like a power screwdriver on it is because you don't want to over torque it because you might split the wood. And so as long as you're careful, you can use an electric screwdriver. But I didn't because I was afraid of splitting the wood. And there's artwork on the woods. The package that it came in looked like it had a couple holes. There were some tears, but those tears were only superficial on the outside of the package as it was being delivered. They did not puncture through any into the actual box itself. So nothing was damaged in transit, and it's pretty easy to set up once you get everything built. So there's one ribbon cable that goes from the flight stick, from the yoke, to the actual TV, and then in the back there are just a couple of ports for like the speakers and the lights and your power and stuff. But it's pretty minimal. I'm sure some people can mod it and get it in there. The flight yoke itself feels really nice. So I put it on top of the riser immediately, basically before I was even done. And there is instruction in the riser on how you can like attach it to the riser. I didn't do that. So that way I can take it on and off. So yeah, so there's only just a couple of things to hook up in the very back, and that should have everything works. And it's in terms of like the instructions, even though I don't build that much IKEA stuff, my wife does, and she actually said the instructions here are actually better than IKEA's. They're full page. I was never really confused on how to do anything, whereas like IKEA stuff, like actual IKEA stuff, leaves some things to the imagination, and you have to kind of figure some things out. One thing I will say is that when I did finally get to the point of wanting to remove the plastic off of the screen, it really didn't want to cooperate, and not all of it actually got off the screen. There's actually still a little bit of plastic up at the top. So this is me. I'm turning it in. I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm turning it on for the first time. This is literally the first time. I didn't know if it would work. The light came on. There's a light-up marquee. And it actually works. Hooray! So that was the build, and like I said, there is a light-up marquee. That's something pretty new for the Arcade1up machines. They do have a volume slider, which is also new for Arcade1up machines, so you can actually turn up and down the volume there. But the flight yoke, it comes calibrated, even though there is a calibration menu if you really need it. I was testing and checking everything on the machine there. So now you want to see me actually playing it. And so I go in first to the original Star Wars. This is the Star Wars game that everybody remembers in the arcade. They did make a couple other arcade cabinets for the other games, basically reusing the same hardware. But this is the way that I remember playing it. I've gotten to play the real arcade cabinet at a couple recently at like Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Somebody will have the actual cabinet, and this feels really good. It doesn't feel cheap at all in terms of the controller. I know some other Arcade 100 or Arcade1up games have button issues, quality issues with the buttons. They kind of feel cheap. This one actually feels good. I would be very interested in a racing cabinet after playing this. If Arcade1up did like a racing cabinet that had like pole position, road blaster, super off-road, outrun, something like that. Because I think they did really well with this very unique control scheme compared to things. But it's very snappy. It looks the way I remember it, even though it is emulating vector graphics on a CRT, basically. And here we go. I killed the Death Star. Hooray! So, yeah. There goes the Death Star. I beat the first wave on easy. There actually are settings menus that you could even change the difficulty. It changes some of the BIOS settings that for the game, so you can actually make it easier, give yourself more lives, higher shield, stuff like that. So now I'm going into the Empire Strikes Back game, which is another vector game. Basically, they were trying to reuse the hardware, so they made another game on here. And so this one, where it's a little bit different, is that you actually get to throw the tow cables on the AT-ATs or AT-ATs, whatever you want to call them, and get them to fall, like in the movie. That's what they were trying to recreate in this one. Tiger Claw says there's a setting where you can set the intensity of the vector graphics. Yes, this is on standard. I looked at the other ones. And I don't want to change the intensity. This what they have it set as default is perfect for me. So this is the part now where you put the tow cables on, and you make them fall down. Fall down, go boom. And I'm actually not this good at the game. I'm cherry picking these segments. You haven't seen me die yet, but I do. Actually, you will see me die in a little bit. But a lot of people didn't like this game because they're like, they destroyed a Star Wars cabinet to make this game, and the first game was a lot better. And I will admit that the first one is a little bit more iconic. It is the one most people played. But this one still has its charm, and it has some other segments. It actually uses all the buttons for it to work. I want that shit, not excuses. So then it actually it goes back. Empire Strikes Back has more sets to its waves. So now we're up in space. We're fighting TIE fighters. This is much like the original Star Wars game. But then it goes into another thing where you have to avoid an asteroid field, or avoid things in the asteroid fields, and that's where you're going to see me actually hit some stuff. And one of the things I want to point out that they do in this is that they actually emulate the gray screen when you get hit. This is something that no other emulation has done. In fact, people thought it was a mistake when they saw it in this Arcade1up cabinet because they had never seen it before. But on an actual vector screen, it shows up like that. And so they emulate it correctly on this. It's a little brighter on a CRT than it is on the vector screen, but it's actually more accurate. So then we go to Return of the Jedi, which is using the same cabinet, except now they put a raster thing in there. So now it's raster graphics. It looks like a regular, mid-'80s arcade game, but it still uses the flight yoke. And when it comes with it, you can't see it here, but they have scan lines on, which are basically just look like black lines. And so this is your Battletoads. So you're on a land speeder going through, and other people are trying to chase you. And you're trying to get them to run into trees without running into trees yourself. Your friends, the Ewoks, will actually come in, and you'll be able to... Yep, they'll do that. And so you go through things, and they will actually hurt the land speeders for you. And for some reason, I don't know how I didn't die in this, but I somehow got through everything there. So after you make it to the little tree fort or whatever, then you are now going into the Death Star. And you have to dodge curtains. I don't know why there are curtains. But it's kind of like Zaxxon. It's a little, it's kind of like an overhead view like this. And you need to not get shot, and you need to not hit the curtains like that. So I figured this was because of the scan lines. So I go into the settings over here, and I actually turn the scan lines off. You can also change the difficulty in settings. I did not touch the difficulty. Are you guys so proud of me? So, so it's still at the default difficulty. So I go back into the game to see if I can get any farther. I kind of do, I kind of don't. So this one, it's hard. Everybody's even saying in chat, SJ Matt says, Return of the Jedi is hard. It is hard. I was actually watching YouTube videos and people were beating it and passing it, and I'm like, oh, it looks easy. It's not. It's not easy. So here I am going through the speeder part again. You can actually push people to the side, and if you get them on the edge there, then they blow up. But you still need to not blow up yourself. And that is easier said than done, especially when you freak out and you start trying to go right through. It's not going to work like that. But then if you actually do make it through the Death Star and get to the middle, you actually have to shoot the reactor at the middle, which is not that hard. And then you have to escape. It's just like Metroid. You have to escape to get on the way out. So you come back the way you came in as the fire approaches, and then if you don't, then the fire gets you. At the end, it does actually play the original Yub or whatever. The original celebration theme from the pre-mastered trilogy. That's still in there. That's what this is. And so on the video here, I'm showing the sides of the cabinet after it's been built in my basement. And yes, Yub is canon. And so that is the Arcade1up build for Star Wars and my wonderful video of it. So, yeah, so do I think it's worth the $500 I spent on it? Yes. I actually do have a coworker. I'm gonna say this. I do have a coworker that collects arcade cabinets. And he basically said, look, you can go to this auction up in Tennessee and you can buy a Return of the Jedi cabinet for $300. Why? So he was basically kind of, saying I was dumb for buying this cabinet for $500, this Arcade1up. It's 3/4 size. So it's it's not as big as a full-size cabinet, and I don't have a full-size cabinet to show you any kind of comparisons and stuff, but it still felt good, and it was using modern equipment. You saw on the inside there's not that much in there, so it's not that heavy. And I felt that for the 3 games, I felt this was a great purchase. Am I going to buy other 1-Up cabinets? Am I going to go buy the Mortal Kombat one or the Street Fighter one or basically anything with buttons and a joystick? No. I personally still want to actually get a MAME cabinet, a full-size MAME cabinet that can play all those games, and maybe even put some trackballs on there so I can play Centipede and Missile Command and something like that. But like I said before, if Arcade1Up puts out a racing game, maybe with a racing wheel and a pedal, and gives me like pole position and super off-road and outrun and road blasters, and even though I'm kind of mixing, they're not going to do those because some are Sega, some of are Atari. But if they give me something like that, then I would actually buy that one. I am totally fine with buying these reproductions, these 3/4 size reproductions of games that had a really unique control stick. If I was a big fan of Golden Tee, which is the most popular arcade game in America, sorry to say it, then I would probably buy the Arcade1Up version of that. Unless I was a professional player that goes on ESPN 8 The Ocho with the Golden Tee Championships, then I'd want to actually get a full-size one to actually play it.